Spiraling out of control with a question mark. Armenia and Azerbaijan on the brink. Welcome to this latest webinar from the Ruth K. and Shepard Broad Distinguished Lecture Series, brought to you by the Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs at Florida International University here in Miami. I'm David Kramer, Senior Fellow in the Green School here at FIU, and want to welcome you for this excellent webinar. Our co-sponsors for today's event are the European and Eurasian Studies Program, the Department of Politics and International Relations, and the Václav Havel Program for Human Rights and Diplomacy. From Belarus in the west to Kyrgyzstan in the east and places in between, the Eurasian landscape is in turmoil. In the South Caucasus, renewed fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan in and around the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region erupted on September 27th, but it goes back even earlier to July and even further than that, back into the 1980s, the late 1980s. The latest clashes, however, are the worst we've seen in many years and have caused thousands of civilian and military casualties on both sides. A Russian-mediated humanitarian ceasefire 9 days ago has essentially fallen apart. Turkey has sided with Azerbaijan and has possibly brought Syrian fighters into the mix. Russia has a treaty with Armenia, and Iran could also play a role in the conflict. Even Israel has been selling arms to Azerbaijan. The possibility that the conflict could spiral out of control is in fact very real. We have a terrific expert panel to discuss these latest developments and what they mean not only for Armenia and Azerbaijan, but for the wider region. Joining us today is Dr. Lilia Arakelian, who is an adjunct professor in the Department of Politics and International Relations and a research associate at FIU's European and Eurasian Studies Program. Dr. Ali Bakir is a political analyst and researcher based in Ankara, Turkey. And Dr. Hannah Kassab is an assistant professor at East Carolina University. And I want to thank all three of you for taking the time to join us today. And we'll go ahead, I think, and start with some opening comments from each of you. If you can go ahead and turn on your videos, and we'll start with Lilia, with you to make some opening comments. Then we'll turn to Dr. Bakir and then Dr. Kassab. So Dr. Arakelian, over to you, please.
Thank you, David. First of all, I would like to thank you for organizing so quickly this webinar, and thank you for having me today. So I would like to give a very brief background of the conflict. The conflict has roots dating back well over a century into competition between Christian Armenian, Muslim Turkic, and Persian influences. Populated by centuries by Christian Armenian and Turkic Azeris, Karabakh became part of the Russian Empire in the 19th century as an independent entity. After the end of World War I and the Bolshevik Revolution, the new Soviet rulers, as part of their divide and rule strategy, established the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Republic with an ethnic Armenian majority within the Soviet Socialist Republic of Azerbaijan in the early 1920s. During the 1988 and 1994, there was a 6-year full-scale war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which ended in 1994 with a ceasefire. So basically, the international community didn't recognize the independent Republic of Artsakh, which is the Armenian version of Nagorno-Karabakh. Artsakh declared independence in 1991, and I would like to point out a very important actually policy. So the declaration of independence is not. I'm sorry. I would like to point out that the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, not over the dispute territory from the Armenian perspective, but about the issue of self-determination and fundamental human rights. As we know, this principle of self-determination is embodied in Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations. We have the presence of Kosovo, which also declared independence and was actually recognized by some of the members of the European Union and of the United Nations. What about the independent Republic of Artsakh is not recognized by any member states of the United Nations, including Armenia. It's just recognized by 3 de facto states, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and Transnistria. Also, I would like to point out why this conflict is different. Of course, we have the involvement of Turkey, which is a major power in the in the region. And we have a very reluctant Russia, even though Russia has a very close military, political, and economic ties with Armenia, and Armenia is a part of the Collective Treaty Security Organization. But up until now, Russia doesn't dispatch a single soldier. Russia has an army in Gyumri, which is the second largest city in Armenia. Of course, as you mentioned, David, Russia brokered two ceasefires which were already violated within minutes after signing a deal. Also, I would like to say that we had actually the peaceful Velvet Revolution. I mean Armenia, had a peaceful Velvet Revolution in 2018. So basically, Armenia now, it's a very democratic and liberal state. But while it all sounds very good, but in the meantime, Armenia now has a strained relationship with the authoritarian regimes in the region, including Russia. I think that my personal opinion is that this is why Russia is reluctant, to get involved. This is one of the reasons that I see Russia's reluctance to be involved in the region. Second, Armenia decreased its military budget in 2019 because, as I say, Armenia had a revolution, and Armenia decided that democratic reforms are more important than the militarization of the region. On the other hand, Azerbaijan actually, as we know, increased its military budget. And during 2008 and 2018, Azerbaijan spent around $24 billion on militarization. We know that Azerbaijan is buying arms from Russia. And I have to mention that Russia supplies arms to both Armenia and Azerbaijan, of course. Azerbaijan buys arms from Israel, from Turkey, from Ukraine, from Belarus. So what we have here not only security dilemma with the involvement of third parties. You mentioned foreign fighters, which is a very, very dangerous actually issue, because as we know, these foreign fighters, they were brought from Syria and from Libya to fight in the South Caucasus. This creates security issues not only for Armenia and for bordering countries, Georgia, but also for Russia, because in Russia we know there is a very large Muslim population in Chechnya. The second actually point that I would like to mention is the reluctance of both parties involved in this conflict, of Turkey and Azerbaijan, to have any peaceful talks. President Aliyev made it very clear that he wants to solve this conflict by military means only. Of course, if we actually compare the might of Armenia with the decreased military budget in 2019, a de facto state of Artsakh, which is also military very weak, it's very obvious that Armenia and Artsakh cannot be comparable in military terms with a very large military power such as Turkey and Azerbaijan. If you will ask me how I see the future, I believe that the self-determination of Republic of Artsakh has to be actually at the center of the Minsk Group resolution. Second, Turkey was never involved before in any peaceful talks. Turkey is not part actually of the Minsk Group. The Minsk Group consists of three co-chairs: Russia, the United States, and France. And all co-chairs, they made it really clear that they want a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Nobody wants war. Second, so I believe the third parties' involvement, such as Turkey and foreign fighters, need to be eliminated from the conflict. Of course, Armenia and Azerbaijan, both countries, have to achieve compromise. There is no peaceful solution without compromise from both sides. That will be all. Thank you.
Great, Lilia, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Ali, if we could turn to you next, please, for comments. I know it's evening there in Ankara already, so we appreciate very much your taking the time to join us, and please be sure to unmute.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for inviting me for this very timely and important webinar, actually, with such distinguished guests. A lot of points, actually, Dr. Lilian started with, so it's hard to cope with that. But I will start by, everyone obviously knows that the conflicting positions of Armenia and Azerbaijan when it comes to the current conflict. But I think that it's very important to start with establishing facts before discussing the topic, because the way we provide these facts or withhold them can affect also the perception or convictions of those who are hearing us or listening to us. So in this sense, the fact is Armenia currently under the international law is an occupying force. It's occupying around 20% of Azerbaijan's lands. There are 4 Security Council resolutions and at least 2 General Assembly resolutions that asserts Azerbaijan's sovereignty and territorial integrity and demands Armenia to immediately end its occupation and withdraw its forces from those territories and restore it to Azerbaijan. So this is what the international law says. But obviously, during the last around 30 years, Armenia didn't withdraw from these regions, and there are at least 4 reasons why Armenia didn't take such step. I would say that one main reason is that the balance of power between Azerbaijan and Armenia was always tilting in favor of Armenia when this conflict started 3 decades ago. And second, Minsk Group actually didn't manage to produce a useful solution, and its co-chaired members, Russia, France, and United States, are biased, and all these countries have considerable Armenian diaspora, and also Russia is a strategic ally of Armenia. I mean, without Russia, Armenia couldn't have occupied these territories 3 decades ago. And also Armenia enjoyed a strong support from Iranian regime, and still, by the way. So, and the 4th reason is that Azerbaijan was in a very weak position at the time, and had no real allies to support it. I mean, with the exception of Turkey and Israel, Azerbaijan didn't enjoy support like Armenia, although the international law was in its side. So these 4 main reasons allowed Armenia to actually fortify its occupation for the Azeri territories. And this lasted 30 years. Now, Azerbaijan was open during these 3 decades to discussion and trying to solve the conflict peacefully. But obviously, and again here, Minsk Group had responsibilities to contribute to this solution. They had no motive to participate in finding a solution, and actually their interest was in freezing the conflict, not finding a solution to the conflict. And obviously this is a good outcome for Armenia and a very bad outcome for Azerbaijan. We should also notice that the Armenian occupation during 3 decades managed to ethnically cleanse around 1 million Azeri from that region. So we have this problem, and because there is no peaceful resolution was presented at the time, and Armenia obviously didn't want to implement what the international law says and the UN Security Council resolutions, both sides resorted to, again, balance of power. They tried to depend on the military power, either to keep the occupation or to try to push against it. Now, I think that during the last few years, there have been a change in the balance of power in favor of Azerbaijan when it comes to the military power. And the reason here is not only because Azerbaijan, and it is very important oil and gas producer increase its military budget, also because of the regional configuration, things started to change. And now Azerbaijan feels frustrated because 30 years didn't produce a peaceful solution. Now, when it comes to the Turkish position or interest in this conflict, Turkey has always been a supporter for Azerbaijan sovereignty and territorial integrity, and this is also something that is recognized by the UN Charter, and this was not something secret. Turkey also supports Azerbaijan politically. I mean, Turkey was the first country to recognize Azerbaijan after its independence. Also, I think Israel is the second country to recognize Azerbaijan. Turkey and Azerbaijan shares ethnic, cultural, historic, deep and rooted ties, and these contribute to the very strong relation between the people of the two countries and also the two states. The people in Turkey and also in Azerbaijan summarize the situation by saying two states in one nation. So also, when it comes to the economic dimension, I mean, the economic relations between Turkey and Azerbaijan are robust, and the volume of bilateral trade right now is around $4.5 billion. Both are aiming to increase it to around $15 billion in the near future. And besides this, also, we have that Turkey from the beginning said that it will always support Azerbaijan in terms of its legal position, and also because of the bilateral relations, strong bilateral relations. So Turkey didn't, unlike other countries like United States, France, and Russia, Turkey didn't falsely pose itself as a neutral player. And that's why Turkey is saying now, because the Minsk Group and Azerbaijan is saying, we have betrayed by Minsk Group, and they are not in a neutral position to serve a solution. So we need countries to balance this unbalanced situation. That's why I think 5 years ago, Azerbaijan suggested that Turkey and Germany should join Minsk Group in order to create the needed balance to find a solution. Otherwise, France and Russia, a strong ally of Armenia, and France has been also supporting Armenia, and the US has its own calculations. They are not interested in finding a solution rather than freezing the situation. And as we said, freezing the situation is a win for Armenia and loss for Azerbaijan. So this is when it comes to the Turkish role. There have been a lot of claims and allegations that Turkey is involved in the current conflict, and Turkey is not involved in the conflict in any way. And also, when it comes to the foreign fighters, I agree with the notion that no foreign fighters should join such a conflict, because this will exacerbate the situation and make it even worse. But unfortunately, there have been inaccurate reporting of saying that there have been fighters brought from Libya and Syria. Of course, Turkey and Azerbaijan denies this, but also, on the other hand, there have been foreign fighters fighting on behalf of Armenia coming from Lebanon, Syria, and elsewhere. And as a person who lived 18 years in Lebanon, I know that for a fact, and there are very verifiable videos that can prove this claim by me. The audience can smart and they can check this. Before I end, I have actually 4 concerns about the current situation between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I'm afraid that if Armenia refused to withdraw its forces from the region, this will even push Azerbaijan to depend more on the military operation to free more of the lands, and this can, of course, Azerbaijan can manage to do this, but it will come at high cost for both parties. Second, and here I am very concerned of the increasing religious rhetoric of Armenia towards this conflict. This is not a religious conflict in any way. It is a conflict between occupation and a country who wants to liberate its land. So religion is not involved in any way in this conflict and shouldn't be involved. And thirdly, expanding the area and the region of conflict is very dangerous, and we have been seeing that Armenia is trying to expand the region of conflict by targeting purely civilian cities like Ganja. It's 100 kilometers away from the current skirmishes. There is no reason to bomb this unless you want a retaliation that can legitimize a direct Russian involvement, and this is what Armenia have been aiming from the beginning. They want Russia to directly involve in the conflict because they know that they cannot stand against Azerbaijan, and that's why they were saying Turkey is involved and we need Russia to get involved. Till now, this situation. So I'll stop here, although we can discuss the situation later. Thank you.
Ali, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hannah, let's turn to you now, please, if we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my presentation will discuss the regional insecurity situation, specifically looking at the possibility of direct confrontations between Turkey and Russia, as well as the influx of foreign fighters into the area. So my research has primarily dealt with weak states and how they act as power vacuums that invite great power conflict. And so the Armenian-Azeri conflict can be summarized in just one sentence. One nation occupies a territory that another nation sees as its own. So the ceasefire in 1994 did not solve the conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. And because of this, we see Azerbaijan seeking to win back its lost territory. So Azerbaijan seeks to recover these lands, and they're willing to use force to achieve this goal. Because of its access to the Caspian Sea, being a producer of oil, its capacity to use territory to bring oil and gas around the world, and its wealth, Azerbaijan has been able to gain international support. Its practice of caviar diplomacy has been vital to expand its influence around the world. On the other hand, Armenia is less wealthy than Azerbaijan. It lacks international support. Its great power allies are Iran and Russia, and to a lesser extent, the United States. And because of its landlocked territory, specifically between two historical enemies, Turkey and Azerbaijan, its only real powerful neighbor is Russia. And Russia has access through Georgia, so it's not even a direct connection. The security dilemma here is in play. And the more weapons that flow into one state, the more insecure the region becomes. And this perception remains true as the potential for full-scale conflict becomes more viable. So regional, in terms of regional stability, the conflicts tend to spill over into other areas and other territories, bringing in other actors. And as foreign fighters and terrorists join the fray, parties may feel the need to call in further support to achieve their political goals. And the Caucasus are in the Russian sphere of influence. So the Caucasus is historically supposed to be safely in the Russian camp. This region is necessary for Russia, for its own security, its own influence. But Russia has been destabilizing the Caucasus because they've been selling weapons to both sides of the conflict, basically creating the insecurity. So Russia is at fault here. And the more the state and non-state actors enter the region, it actually threatens Russian power, Russian influence, and Russian security, especially in relation to Chechnya, where thousands of Chechen fighters have joined the Islamic State in that period, in that war in between Syria, Iraq, and of course the Islamic State. Foreign fighters, of course, have always been a problem. In the 1990s, Afghan Mujahideen and Chechen fighters fought alongside Azerbaijan, and this continues today. And the Guardian and the Wall Street Journal report that hundreds of Islamic State fighters from Syria, allied with Turkey, have joined the fight between on Azerbaijan's side against Armenia over the disputed enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh, and hundreds more are preparing to go. But this is a drop in the bucket. because there are between 10,000 and 16,000 Syrian rebel group fighters, former ISIS fighters, that are working with Turkey and are in short deployments in North Africa, specifically to forward Libya's own sponsorship of the war in Libya and over the Eastern Mediterranean. And these fighters are offered around £1,000 British pounds a month, which is a significant sum of money. And because of this, Israel should be alarmed, because their weapons and their drone technologies could end up in terrorist hands. And so who are the winners in the conflict? Obviously, it's Turkey. Turkey gets to expand its influence. Turkey and its foreign fighters may decide to defect from Azerbaijan to pursue their own specific interests in the area. The terrorist fighters may defect and destabilize Russia further. And so the biggest loser here is Russia, because Russia is allowing other actors into its sphere of influence. Furthermore, Israeli intellectual property might be stolen by the Armenian side. Remember, Armenia and Iran are closely interconnected. And as a result, the technology stolen can be reverse engineered and used against Israel by Iran. And so Iran is definitely a winner here. Also, because Armenia depends on Iran so much that they can circumvent American sanctions in order to pursue their specific international goals, specifically their nuclear energy program or nuclear weapon program. And so this offers them the ability to achieve a domestic objective, but as well an international prestige objective. And so I try to think of solutions and this is a very difficult solution because people in the region, the Armenian nation and the Azeri nation have this connection to the land. And so there's a very emotional connection. And so it's going to be very difficult to persuade them of making some kind of peace. So one way to do it, or possibly, would be to connect areas across the region. So one area would be uniting and allowing autonomous states to unite with its proper areas. So for example, Armenia could trade some territory so that Azerbaijan can have access to the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and a similar area could be used to unite Armenians with the Nagorno-Karabakh. And this may be able to help alleviate some of the bad blood between the two states, as well as provide a foundation for future collaboration. And so, much like previous wars, it is likely that the Armenian and Azeri conflict will end in a stalemate. The geographical terrain rewards the defender, not the attacker. And if this is acceptable to both sides, then fine, the conflict will continue. But in order to stop the conflict, some very difficult choices have to be made. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that very much. Thanks to all three of you for some very interesting, even if quite different perspectives on the situation. But we're an academic institution, and debate is at the heart of what we do. Let me try to start. Maybe, Andre, if we can bring the map back up just for a minute so folks can have a sense of where we're talking about. And I obviously can't point to it, but we're talking about this region called the South Caucasus. You can see the part called Russia there. In that part of Russia, that's where the North Caucasus are. They also go further to the left of the map from there. Georgia, I think, as one of you mentioned, it stands between Russia and Armenia. So Georgia is also caught up in this conflict. It is watching rather nervously, I would say. You see Iran. Iran has a very sizable Azerbaijani population in Iran. It has a sizable Armenian population in Iran. So it has a complicated situation, and there's a long-standing ties between Turkey and Azerbaijan as well. But let me try, and in running through all that, I appreciate your forbearance. And let me remind people watching, you can send questions through the Q&A function on the Zoom at the bottom. Please feel free to do so, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Can we get a sense of the casualties that we have seen on the various sides? Do we have a sense of the scale of the impact of the fighting and the number of people who have been injured and killed, both civilian and military? I don't know if someone has a sense of the statistics, the numbers that we're talking about here. Lilia, go ahead if you do.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
First of all, I want to mention that both sides, they are exaggerating, of course, the other side's casualties, right? And they are decreasing their own, both sides. I'm talking about Armenia and Azerbaijan. But according to official sources, Armenia has around 700 soldiers killed. Dozens of civilians in Stepanakert and in other parts of Nagorno-Karabakh got killed. From Azerbaijani side, according to Armenian sources, they lost more. But again, as I said, I cannot rely on official sources from Azerbaijan.
And Ali and Hannah, do you have any sense on the numbers we're talking about here? Ali, maybe if you have anything to add here.
I actually don't want to enter into the numbers problem, but obviously there are a lot of casualties, both sides. I also agree with what Dr. Lilia said. There is a sense of exaggeration sometimes. I mean, especially in the Armenian side too, because they are in a desperate position and they need to push back against what's happening. So they are depending on media. But anyway, I just want to point to a topic, and we can see, I mean, if people can see the map, in the northwest of Azerbaijan, there is a point and it's written behind it, Ganje.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see it. Yes. This city is the second populated city in Azerbaijan, after, of course, the capital Baku. And it is, as everyone can notice, almost 100 kilometers away from the conflict. This city has been bombed by Armenia 3 times at least by ballistic missiles, and there are no military posts there, and this city is not engaged in any way in the conflict. So the reason of trying to target such city is actually first to try to put pressure on Azerbaijan in order to halt the military operations and make its casualties, of course, high, especially in the civilian side. And second, maybe try to provoke Azerbaijan to make a strong retaliation against Armenian civilian city in order to activate the Armenian-Russian alliance and drag Russia directly to the conflict, because as we noticed, Russia said at the beginning of the conflict that it is not meant to intervene because Azerbaijan is not targeting directly Armenia, rather than fighting to restore its occupied territories. So Armenia needs a cause in order to drag Russia and Iran to enter directly into the conflict, because as we said, Armenia cannot alone stand against Azerbaijan. And in this sense, I would say that Azerbaijan doesn't need fighters. We can see it is almost double the size of Armenia at least, and it is at least, maybe, if I'm not wrong, triple size of population. So there is no need for fighters. And
can I respond, David, please? Because I wanted to
Yeah,
respond,
sure.
Dr. Ali, before previously. First of all, Dr. Ali, I would like to point out that Azerbaijan already bombed the Armenian city of Vardenis. We cannot see on the map, and there are actually casualties among civilians. And both of all, there is Armenian jet was shot down by Turkey. But until now, Russia didn't intervene in the conflict, even though, as I already mentioned, Azerbaijan did actually bomb the Armenian city of Vardenis. Second, when you are talking that there is no military there is no military equipment in Ganja. No, Ganja was used in order to bomb Stepanakert, and as you can see, it's really close, right, to Nagorno-Karabakh. So this is the second point that I would like to make. And you are saying that Armenia is trying to expand the territory of the conflict, but how come if Armenia is trying to expand the territory of the conflict and get the involvement of Russia or Iran, right? How come the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan was very clear that we want a peaceful resolution, we want a ceasefire. In the meantime, both President Erdogan and President Ilham Aliyev, they made it clear that they don't want to shake ceasefires. They want to actually solve the conflict by military means. Thank you.
So let me jump in. Ali, if you want a quick response to that, please go ahead. And then Hannah, I'll come to you if you don't mind. But Ali, if you want to respond quickly, please do.
Thank you. I know that, look, the situation is very tense, okay? And both sides have their own stories. I want to be as objective as possible, but we should also try to distinguish between facts and claims. And the fact is, as I said before, Ganja is very far, as you can see on the map. There's no way that it's used. It is a civilian city, second most populated city. And as I said, Armenia needs Russia and Iran to intervene. And this has been publicly said. It's not a claim by me. And the only way both can intervene is that the conflict expands beyond the Azerbaijani occupied territories, because Russia and Iran cannot intervene into Armenian side if the conflict is only in the occupied territories, because they don't have legal position. They are in a very weak legal position. And as we said before, maybe Armenia or any other side is considering these territories as disputed, but international law, UN Security Council resolutions, 4 of them, and 2 General Assembly resolutions are saying these are Azerbaijani lands. And there is no single country in the world says otherwise. So Russia is in very weak legal position. Besides, there is also a pressure on Russia in Kyrgyzstan and in Belarus, and it's overstretched actually militarily in the Middle East and Libya and Syria. So there's no appetite for Russia to intervene directly in such conflict, especially if there is no permanent resolution. And the permanent resolution comes by simply Armenia withdrawing its forces. Seizing the fire is not a solution. It is a win for Armenia because it helps Armenia to keep its occupied territories under its control. And this is, of course, a loss for Azerbaijan, because these are 20% of Azerbaijan's land. It's not just 1 town or 2. This is a huge space of territory.
Ali, thank you. Hannah, let me ask you to jump in here, please.
I'll keep it brief. This is a war between nations. Cities are going to get targeted. People are going to get targeted. There will be battle deaths. So we shouldn't be surprised that cities are being targeted. It's just a fact that is it's a natural fact. Every national conflict that we know of targets civilians, and civilians are going to die. And it's unfortunate, of course, but it's something that we must prepare for, we must understand. And in a conflict like this, it's important to demonstrate that war will have costs, and the human costs are, of course, going to be expected. Now, when it comes to the amount of battle deaths, I've seen different figures. I don't really trust the figures, but it's going to be costly for both sides. When the bodies are counted, I'm sure it will be clear that both sides will pay tremendous costs.
David, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions to ask from Dr. Ali, because previously when he presented, can we have this, and also Hannah?
Yes, but I tell you what, let me bring in the audience questions first,
Okay.
Lilia, and then if we can, we'll circle back, because I appreciate that we're getting some questions from the audience. Okay. And Andre, actually, sorry, if you don't mind putting the map back up, because the first question I think will be helpful to see the map. If we can. And so Alex Crowther asks, why is the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic not getting dragged into this conflict yet? It seems as though Armenia could gain an advantage by threatening the area. And
Exactly.
has been discussed, you can't see my cursor pointing at it, but it's the part in the, if you will, the southwest corner of the map that says Nakhichevan, and it's part of Azerbaijan, but as you all have pointed out, it is separated. It's not contiguous to the rest of Azerbaijan. So does someone want to try to answer Alex's question here?
Can I just very quickly provide a historical background about Nakhichevan? Nakhichevan, along with Nagorno-Karabakh, was given to Azerbaijan, and is actually, as one of the listeners pointed out, is located in the territory of Armenia. It was given to Azerbaijan in the 1920s. So absolutely, if Dr. Ali is arguing that Armenia is actually interested in expanding, right, the territory of war, how come so far Nakhichevan wasn't bombed? How come actually other close territories weren't bombed, Dr. Ali? One more thing, Dr. Ali, when you are saying that Russia has a legal, Russia doesn't have a legal obligation to support Armenia, which it does, because as I say, Armenia is a part of the collective security organization. Can you please tell me what does Turkey has in terms of the legal obligation to support Azerbaijan? And very quickly about the foreign fighters that Dr. Ali was mentioning, I would like to join Armenian side. I would like to say that probably they are ethnic Armenians, because as we know, there are very large communities, right, Armenian communities in Syria, in Lebanon. So we do not have any foreign fighters that are not ethnic Armenians fighting on the Armenian side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Whoops, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Bakir, sorry.
Thank you, David. It's a quite important question why Nakhichevan was not involved in this conflict. In fact, a few days ago, one reported target said that a missile was launched from Armenia to this area. Now, Armenia denied this issue. I don't have the ability to verify whether this was right or not, but this is very dangerous area. Why? Because as you can see, it is close to Iran and Turkey. It's only 11 kilometers away from Turkey. This is very, very close to Turkey. And trying to target this region, you might mistakenly hit Iran or Turkey. And if it hit Turkey, it would give it the legitimate reason to directly involve in the conflict, and Armenia wouldn't be in a favored position. And also, when it comes to Iran, now Iran is a very strong ally historically to Armenia, but it has a problem right now. Also, Iran is overstretched in the region under US sanctions, very weak economically and politically, and is trying to hold its internal situation. So we have a very big Azerbaijani minority in Iran. It is actually the first after the Persian, and most of them are located in the north of Iran, near this area. So if Armenia is trying also to provoke Nakhichevan and to target it, this will certainly cause an internal Iranian problem, and Iran will not be comfortable with it and will not allow Armenia to do such thing, because it will harm Iran at the end of the day. Now, when it comes to the questions about the foreign fighters, yes, there is a big Armenian diaspora, as I have said, but they are still foreign fighters because they are Lebanese, they are Syrian. Otherwise, if we want to use this logic, also those who would join any Turkish operation, they are from Turkish roots, the Turkoman, and you have, in this is very dangerous game. If you want to play it like this, if the Armenians coming from other countries is legitimate, then also Turkey can play this. And I am not in favor of supporting any such discussion, because, as I said before, no foreign fighters should be involved in behalf of any of the countries. But I understand also that some of the sides are trying to play the first religious rhetoric, it's Islamic versus Christians, and second, the terrorist foreign fighters issue, because this will alarm the pro-Armenia countries such as France, United States, and Russia, and will push them to unify their position and also to lend more support to Armenia. We are aware of this game, and it's also not a good, because the very simple solution is that according to international law, Armenia should withdraw from the occupied territories, from the Azerbaijani occupied territories. And then I support what colleague Hannah said. Probably both should negotiate a solution, whether it will be autonomous region under Azerbaijani state, or whether maybe exchange of territories can happen. This can be discussed and should be discussed after Armenia withdraw its forces. Otherwise, if Armenia insists on keeping its occupying forces, as I said, and I have really concern about this issue, then this will encourage Azerbaijan to continue its military operation to liberate its occupied territories, and the cost will be high on both sides, as Hannah also said. And this is not a good thing for any of the countries, and also for the regional countries, because there can be dragged in a way or another at certain point to the conflict.
David,
so Hannah, let me
quickly. Okay,
really
I want to
quickly.
just ask Dr. Bakir, when he's saying that Armenia needs to withdraw its forces, right? As I said, the majority of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh were ethnic Armenians, right? So first of all, I would like to mention that Armenian people were also displaced from Azerbaijan. There were about 500,000 Armenians who were displaced from Azerbaijan, right? So when you are saying, Dr. Ali, that Armenia needs to withdraw its forces from Azerbaijan, where are people supposed to go? So do we actually, as political scientists, do we agree that seeing now what's happening in Nagorno-Karabakh, right, and the involvement of ISIS forces, actually, Dr. Bakir, this is not foreign fighters. They are coming from the branches of ISIS. Okay, so what would happen to the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh when you are saying who is going to protect Armenians? Dr. Bakir. The second, and
Lilia,
also,
we've got to. I want to get some more questions in here from the audience. So, Ali, I'll give you a chance to respond if you want in a bit. But let me bring Hannah in with Dario Moreno's questions here. He talks about Iranian support for Armenia, Israeli support for Azerbaijan. Could the U.S. Support become lean toward Azerbaijan? He wonders. And then, are we going to see more Israeli-Turkey cooperation in the region aligned against Iran? If you could tackle those questions, please.
Of course. Well, I just want to weigh in really quick on the Nakhchivan question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nakhchivan, I don't know what is at stake there, if Armenia will be more secure. I don't know what kind of forces. Maybe they don't have a sizable defensive force in Nakhchivan. And I don't think Armenia would like to fight a two-front war. So I think they might want to keep their support focused on the eastern part of the country. As for the question on the United States joining up or linking up with Azerbaijan over Iran, it's sort of difficult to say. I think historically, the United States has had good relations with Azerbaijan and might want to continue that. However, stepping on the side of Azerbaijan, I don't see it happening. I think what the United States will try to do is act as some kind of a broker, to broker some kind of agreement. And I think another great question that Mr. Moreno asked was about, oh no, that was it. The anti-Iranian alliance in the region.
But also Israel, Turkey. Could we see some cooperation between those two countries dealing with Iran as a result of this conflict?
Well, in terms of Israel, I think the Israeli ambassador just left. The Armenian ambassador resigned his post in Israel, and I believe Israel is waking up to some of the problems that Azerbaijan is, with working together closely with Turkey, and Turkey is becoming more aggressive internationally. Under Erdogan, things have gone a bit more expansionist, which is, to me, I'm taking a very objective approach here. So it's been a more expansionist, and so ultimately, I think we might see a global repositioning of Turkey into a different camp, its own camp, which is altogether expected because Turkey is a great power and needs to be treated as such. and with all the prestige that it is owed. And Israel, I think, understands that. It understands the use of foreign fighters on the Azerbaijan side, which again, I'm not going to pass judgment on Turkey or the use of foreign fighters, Islamic State fighters, because that's just how states behave. States will behave in this manner. It is a new way in which countries are using foreign fighters to achieve their own ends. It's called a proxy war, which we've been seeing since the Cold War era. And so Turkey is taking on this practice. Of course, they're using ISIS fighters, and so that in and of itself should pose a significant problem. Armenian foreign fighters, I don't think that they have conducted the sort of atrocities that Islamic State has conducted. Also, the way that Islamic State defects and pursues its own goals independent of Saudi Arabia and Turkey is something to be strictly concerned about. And I think Israel is concerned about that as well. So we may see a sort of repositioning, a creative destruction approach where Israel and the United States repositions itself because they themselves have their own interests to pursue. And if they're fighting with Azerbaijan, if Israel is fighting with Azerbaijan, it's basically fighting with Islamic State. So I don't know if you want to be on the same team there, but I think that answered the question.
Okay, great, thank you. Ali, I do want to give you a chance to respond to Lilia's question, but I think you've covered Tigran Abrahamyan's question about ganja, but if you want to address that too, and if you can keep it brief, because we're running out of time, and I want to give each of you a quick opportunity to offer a way forward. Hannah tried to do that in his opening comments, but Ali, first respond if you want, and then we'll wrap up with each of you final comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. The way that we can look to this conflict is one of two ways. Either from the perspective of the international law and UN Security Council resolutions, and these are saying that Armenia is an occupying power. The very map that we are looking at it right now, you can see to the right, it said territory of Azerbaijan under the control of Armenian military forces. It is a very nice and smart way to avoid saying occupation, but this is the fact. So the very simple answer to this conflict is just simply to withdraw from this area. Otherwise, if we are saying that there is a minority here or there and this will allow country to intervene militarily, then Turkey can intervene militarily in northern Iran and say there are Turkoman there or Azerbaijanis and let's protect them. Unless you are giving them their own state, we will not withdraw from. This is not illogical. This is illogical. And second, we can look to the conflict from the perspective of the balance of power. I mean, the stronger has the power to do whatever he wants. And actually, Armenia did this from the beginning. I mean, during 30 years, all of the conflict, the Armenian enjoyed, the balance of power was in favor of Armenia, and this is why it was able to keep these territories under its control. So if it comes to the power, right now, the balance of power is shifting to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has the capacity to continue, but as I said before, the cost will be high. When it comes to the foreign fighters, I am against this idea from the beginning, as I clearly asserted, but also I'm against of using the card of ISIS or the Islamic State or whatever to make some sort of alarming pro-Armenia or the international community, because this is not a fact even. Plus, Turkey was the first main country to combat ISIS on the ground in Syria. The US did bomb them from the sky. Everyone bombed them from the sky, but it was Turkey who fought them in the ground. So I don't see that it is sensible to use this card, because it will not solve the issue. The issue is known. Armenia has to withdraw, and then we have to negotiate. And I agree, some of the suggestions Dr. Hanna said are very useful, and we should consider also other alternatives. But if Armenia is insisting on occupying these territories, don't expect Azerbaijan to just accept that. No one country in the world can accept this. This is very simple. I don't see any complicated situation, actually. And let us remind the audience that Armenia, when it occupied these territories, it displaced 1 million Azeri. It made ethnic cleansing. So let's not pretend that this didn't happen. It's not my saying. It's UN
Dr.
report
Bakir, but
saying.
you didn't answer my question.
Hold on, Lilia. Hold on. We're wrapping up here. So let Ali finish first.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, Lilia, closing words to you, and then we'll wrap up with Hannah.
I would like to say the following. It's not a coincidence that Turkey actually and Azerbaijan, they chose a very right time in order to reinstigate this conflict. First of all, we have the pandemic, right? Second of all, we have the presidential elections in the United States. Third of all, Turkey and Russia are already involved in 2 proxy wars in Syria and in Libya, right? And we can say that Turkey is actually expanding its influence now, and Turkey actually expanding its assertive policy, not only in the Middle East, but now in the South Caucasus, right? So this is actually not a coincidence. Second, when Dr. Bakir is talking about that Armenia needs to withdraw the forces from the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, from the Nagorno-Karabakh region, I want to remind our listeners once again that Nagorno-Karabakh has the majority of the Armenian population. So when Azerbaijani government or the Turkish government are asking the Armenian forces to withdraw from the region, Armenians would like to know what would happen to the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Who is going to support them? So this is the second issue that I have. Third of all, I would like to remind our listeners that the Armenian side, we view this conflict as not over disputed territory, but this conflict is about human rights and self-determination of nations that actually are embodied in Article 1st of the Charter of the United Nations, and also were alluded in 14 points of President Wilson. So this is the third. So Armenia didn't occupy Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh was ethnically Armenian. And when Dr. Bakir is talking about the Turkish involvement, there are actually facts that Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan. And I would like to know why this is actually then. I would like to say about the Minsk Group, yes, while they didn't have with the security with any type of framework that will resolve this conflict during these 3 decades, but I do not think that the Minsk Group is biased towards Armenia, because we have the co-chairs such as the United States. The United States has a couple of energy projects in Azerbaijan, right? And we know that the Caspian region, it's an oil-rich region. We have the one of the co-chairs is France, which is a member of the European Union. And we know that the European Union is also actually receiving energy resources from Azerbaijan. And one more thing, Russia. Russia's position is not pro-Armenian, because if it would be, Russia would already support Armenia, since the Armenian city of Vardenis was bombed during these new clashes that happened on September 27. Yes, I think that this conflict can be resolved, and as I already mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, that both sides have to actually be able to compromise, right? But in the meantime, I wanna again reiterate that this is actually the issue of self-determination of nations.
Lilia, thank you. Hannah, last word to you, please.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to present alongside Dr. Bakir and Dr. Arakalian. I'd like to summarize. I opened up my presentation with the simple statement that this conflict can be summarized by the statement, one nation occupies a territory while another state sees it as its own. I think it gets clear as day. International law, even though we like to point to it and try to use it in our arguments, ultimately it does not hold any water. And international law arguments do not hold water. We have to look at power politics. I have to disagree with Dr. Bakir. I don't think the balance of power is on the Azeri side. Specifically for this reason, you can't measure these things here. Even though as the Azeri side has far more advanced weapons, a larger population, a larger economy, it's more has international support. The Armenian side has this emotional attachment, this hundreds, centuries old attachment to these areas, okay? And so because of this, this will add to what we call the will to fight. The will to fight in the sense of we have to preserve our hold on this area. And we can't neglect that. We can't forget that when it comes to our rational calculations of what can we expect actors to do. They're also on what Sun Tzu calls death ground. So either they fight or they die. So that's the Armenian mindset to my understanding. The defense is clearly in Armenia's corner. It's more expensive to pursue an offensive strategy in this regard. And I don't think Armenians are going to withdraw from the Nagorno-Karabakh region without something in mind. And one of the participants asked me to reiterate my solution. And it's just one solution that I thought of as I studied this over the many years, would be connecting areas that would allow the autonomous states in both nations, in Nagorno-Karabakh and in Nakhchivan, to unite with these proper areas. For instance, Armenia could trade some territory for some of Nagorno-Karabakh in order for Azerbaijan to have a connection with Nakhchivan. So this would help alleviate some of the issues there, and it might even provide a foundation for further problem-solving issues, because there's a lot of other non-state issues that must be considered. So I don't think, yes, sir, yes, sorry, I think that's it.
Go ahead, finish your thought, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I think in this regard, some territory trading here would be the best bet, because I don't think any side is going to move. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me wrap this up by saying this issue brings out a lot of passion and some heated disagreements, but I'm grateful to all three of you for joining us today. I should mention that the idea for this webinar came from Lilia, and she was the one who actually reached out to Ali and Tahana, and I'm grateful that all three of you agreed to join us to have this discussion. And so Dr. Arakalian, Dr. Bakir, Dr. Kassab, huge thanks for joining us here today, for airing out this issue. It's a very complicated one on the one hand. Some would say it's also very simple on the other. But at the moment, it is one that is getting a lot of attention, and we certainly hope that people caught in the middle will end the suffering that they are experiencing. So this has been a Ruth K. and Shepard Broad Distinguished Lecture Series, brought to you by the Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs at Florida International University here in Miami. I'm David Kramer. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.